trying to say hi.
Hi. Welcome to the Cato, Sadie, and Sam show.
With your host, Neil.
Actually, welcome to THC Show. A little more casual now. We got those first 200 shows under my belt now. I can relax. Don't have to be so formal. We can fool around a little bit if we want to. I'm just joking, but this is show number 201 of the THC Show. So that sounds amazing to me. I'm not sure how that all happened. I probably slept through the most of them. But anyway, welcome to the show, and thanks for tuning in. I guess I'll light this. Typically I get this lit ahead of time, but like I said, we're a little more casual today. Cannabis, gotta love it. It's what it's all about, really, isn't it? This ridiculous hypocrisy in our world where our forefathers have fought for millennia to gain rights against the elite of this world. Numerous different watersheds along the way where different things have happened and different rights have been granted and this and that. Instead of all kings and pharaohs, we ended up with a little bit of democracy, supposedly. And here we have democracy in Canada that's supposed to be this tolerant, wonderful place with all these public servants, and we got it all figured out here and the people are all free. And that's not the case. The hypocrisy is rampant. Criminal hypocrisy. If we were really free people and we had public servants as those in governance supplying us with what we need for ourselves and just looking after to make sure we're safe and educated and everything, then the cannabis plant would not be the focus of prohibition. Or at this point, overregulation, although prohibition is still alive and well in Canada. Big time. We wanted to end prohibition. I remember the sign that Jody was carrying that day. I mentioned it last week on the show and I couldn't quite get it, but it was politicians in favor of prohibition support organized crime. And that is exactly what's going on, and that's exactly what they've been doing for 100 years here in Canada. Those politicians like prime ministers and justice ministers and those police chiefs and the mayors and all of these people throughout the last 100 years have done their part to make sure that prohibition continues because it supports their friends, those people involved in organized crime. It was easier back in the day. People were a lot more gullible. Nobody really knew much about it. So they started off by telling some pretty huge lies down in the States about it. It was all about a number of different things. It wasn't any one thing in particular, but there were different groups that were benefiting from the demonization and the prohibition of cannabis. It was a way to put down minorities. It was a way to protect the interests of those that had competing products with what cannabis could supply. It was a way to make sure that people weren't using cannabis to open their minds and think about things like taxes and wars and things like that. So they lied through their teeth. You couldn't have told a bigger lie, and I guess they understood that if you're going to tell a lie, tell a big lie. Got a better chance of getting away with it. So they took this plant that for thousands of years had been coveted by different groups and cultures around the world. Used in religious ceremonies, used as medicine, used as an industrial product. It was the basis of wars being fought at different times. It was currency at different points in our history of human beings here. Never really hurt anybody. Sure, you could green out from the concentrates, and there's been concentrates for a long time. It's been hundreds of years that they've understood about getting the trichomes and the resin glands off of the cannabis plant and compressing them together into hashes and things. And there's been some pretty damn potent hashes, for sure. The real potent stuff, not completely. I mean, I don't even like to use the word safe, because, you know, cannabis is a really safe commodity compared to anything else. Greening out is not unsafe, unless you green out and pass out and whack your head on a rock on the way down or something. Cannabis, of all the different plants in nature, is not only one of the best, but it's one of the safest. So the level of hypocrisy involved in public servants in a free country deciding they are all right to use the criminal law to make sure nobody's using this plant has got to be one of the biggest crimes against humanity ever, and one of the most obvious and outrageous crimes. I mean, how much more information do we need? The studies are all there. They've been there for a long time now. In fact, they knew back in the 60s that there was no justification for using the criminal law against people wanting to grow, sell, or use the cannabis plant. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter because rich people were getting richer on its prohibition. And it was pretty well entrenched by the 60s. The lies had all been told for generations, and most of the people bought it. The religious community decided somehow it was the devil's weed, and that God wouldn't want you to use it. So they were on board with prohibition. Those people that had patentable products that cannabis could be used for didn't want it in the marketplace, lobbied for prohibition. Biggest of those would be the pharmaceutical companies. Cannabis is amazing medicine. I think we've learned that as a world over the last 10, 15 years at least. I mean, they've known it for hundreds of years. It's part of the pharmacopoeia in numerous cultures around the world and has been the go-to for a long time for many healers. But the pharmaceutical companies see it as nothing but competition. People can just grow their own, take off the extracts, use it in any way they want. Not hard to grow, not hard to consume, not hard to target what you're using it for. I'm sure it strikes fear in the pharmaceutical companies. I'm sure it does. But it's still not right what they've done. It's still not right that they decide that they're going to try to annihilate the competition by coercing the governments of the day to use the biggest tool in their toolbox to try to scare people and harm people out of wanting to have anything to do with the plant. Not to mention the lies. The lies well entrenched by media that also had vested interests in cannabis not being in the marketplace. The media was what everybody trusted. And there wasn't fake news and alternate news and mainstream news and all the rest of that. There was just the mainstream media for all of these decades leading up to this. And the mainstream media told terrible stories about how cannabis caused people to be violent and insane, was addictive. They even decided in the United States to put it in Schedule 1, meaning that it had no chance of ever being used in any positive medicinal way. Well, nothing could be further from the truth, right? Talk about telling a big lie. We've unraveled all of that. Now it's known very well to be medicine. We have numerous doctors, although certainly not the majority because they're all part of the big pharmaceutical gang. But we have many, many doctors who are okay with cannabis, who have done their part to allow their patients to have access to it. There should be no more of the lies in our society. It should have been well established shortly after those commissions that happened in the 60s, both in the States and here, that cannabis is a natural medicinal herb that should not have any criminal sanctions used against it or people that would have anything to do with it. That was established very clearly. Years long, $1 million plus studies by the governments, and that's what the conclusions were. Yet there was never an apology. When those commissions released their reports, there was no immediate ending of the prohibition. It's taken another 60 years for there to be at least an admission by governments that, well, I guess you can have it. It can't be that bad. I mean, we'll allow for some legalization. Hell, we'll even be the ones in charge of distribution. So now these governments that spent 100 years wasting billions of tax dollars trying to make sure that nobody used cannabis, because, man, that shit's dangerous. They almost a 360, but not quite. They did more like a 240. They came around and said, oh, yeah, okay, well, I guess we'll legalize it, but we still want to protect the children, and we don't want to apologize, and we don't want to make any admissions about it having actual medical value. But, yeah, we get it, where the public's interest is not in having full-blown prohibition anymore. They really do want legalization. In Canada, the public wanted legalization so much that they were, that they voted for the young Trudeau, the ex-kindergarten teacher, who came out and said, we're not just going to legalize for medical people, we're going to legalize for everybody. And the medical people won't have to worry because they'll be taken care of in real legalization. And the unregulated marketplace, that'll just disappear because we're just going to have better weed at better prices than any of that can happen. So everybody's going to want to go to the stores and not go to their local dealer anymore. More lies. No apology. But legalization, so they called it. So many people around the world, many people in Canada thought, hey, weed's legal now. It's over. We finally got our way. We got stores now. Don't have to worry about getting arrested. Except for those people that were growing and selling cannabis. They weren't so sold on the idea. And in fact, more than that, it was their own self-interest. Everything's about everybody's own self-interest. So the self-interest of the growers and the sellers was, that's been their income for a while. That's how they pay their rent and their mortgage and feed their families. So legalization for them, well, it kind of meant a real step backwards or two in what they were able to do to live their lives. So as they mulled it over and thought about it, most of them decided, well, hey, I'm not going to stop growing cannabis, and I'm not going to stop selling cannabis just because now the government says that's illegal. Because it was illegal before legalization. They're not going to stop the money coming in that they need to live their lives when nothing has changed for them. Sure, the government did increase penalties, potentially, if you get caught. They added more dollars to the enforcement arm of things to make sure more people got caught. Still not enough to deter most people who were pretty much entrenched in their lifestyle and their businesses. But that just was fine with the government. In fact, that was part of their plan. They didn't want everybody to stop growing and selling cannabis. They didn't want everybody to use the government stores, because that would put a whole lot of their friends out of business. That would stop the money train coming in from numerous different locations to numerous different people. So the government and their cronies, like it's not just the public servants that got around and decided how to bring in legalization. It was the government and their actual masters, the corporate and financial heavyweights, probably the gangs, those guys in suits that are at the top of the gangs that didn't want their fortunes to end. So they came up with a legalization scheme that allows for the average person to have weed. If you want to buy it, you have to buy it off of them. But there's still going to be a lot of people going to the underground marketplace because it's cheaper and people trust it more. And that's fine with the government. That's why they added penalties. That's why they added enforcement dollars. Because they don't want that end to stop. That gravy train that are stopping in those locations wasn't about to stop. And they knew it. They could have ended the underground marketplace, or at least the vast majority of it, if they had brought in proper cannabis at proper prices and included people properly in the whole scheme. Easy to transition into a licensed grower. No major regulations that would cripple you and not allow you to make money on it. They could have done it if they wanted to, but you just know they didn't want to. You just know that some of those financial and corporate heavyweights were not going to be happy with that. They saw a cash cow that they could milk for a long time into the future. And so we get a form of legalization where the one big gang, the new gang in town, gets to come in and pretty much take over at least the storefronts. Because before legalization, we had a fair amount of storefronts going on in Canada. Illegal, unlicensed, although the city of Vancouver had figured out a licensing scheme for some of these places. Not a great one. They did it knowing that legalization was coming down the road, and they just wanted to get ready for it. And they did it in a fashion that was going to mix with the legalization that we were being offered. But the new big gang in town, the Trudeau cartel, comes in, sets up what is now thousands of stores across Canada, allows provinces to be in charge of their distribution of cannabis, licenses a whole bunch of big corporations to build super greenhouses and grow an incredible amount of cannabis. For the first 12 months of legalization, there wasn't enough cannabis to stock the stores. For the last 3 years, there's been overproduction, way too much. So many of these companies have gone under, many of them have taken over. There's large greenhouses and warehouses sitting empty. There's warehouses that have cannabis in them that they can't sell. 419, roll them if you got them. If not, what's wrong with you? Watching this show and you don't have some weed to roll at 420? I don't know. I'm happy to have you though. If you're not a weed consumer, if you're just watching this show on some whim or just by accident, and you don't know all that I'm talking about, well, welcome, and hang on to your seat. Because despite the truth that cannabis is one of the best and safest medicinal herbs on the planet, public servants in free countries are still wasting billions of dollars to try to prevent access to their citizens and using harmful tactics in trying to get those citizens to comply and obey. We're in very strange and hypocritical times. In any case, 420 means what? Well, after 200 shows, if you're a regular, you know it's Wells. Mr. Glenn FM.
Yes, Glenn FM.
Is joining us for the 420 session, as always.
That was the very first time I ever got paid to play music.
And it won't be the last.
No.
Well, probably not.
Well, a lot of people were happy.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was all right.
So what we're talking about is BC Bud Day.
Yep.
So, if you were watching the show before, you know that Cannabis Day was a huge, terrible fiasco, where the local government, probably in cahoots with the federal government and maybe even with the provincial CSU, decided that they could spend some of these taxpayer dollars that they have so much of and try to keep us from having to protest against how wrong it is that the Trudeau cartel gets to be the only real player in town. So they tried to shut out Cannabis Day.
But we beat him to it. We got there before they did.
Well,
kind of.
no, I'm talking Cannabis Day.
Oh, Tennessee. I was right.
We didn't beat him to Cannabis Day.
No.
We beat him on Cannabis Day because we refused to go away. We refused to allow that fence to deter us, although we didn't breach the fence. We're not like that.
No.
We don't need to give them those kind of optics because you know what they would use.
It's going after your jacket. Pulling them straight from your jacket.
That's all right.
Okay.
That's
okay. All right.
If you got cats, you got to be used to cats doing some things, right?
Okay.
He's all good.
It's your jacket, though. So I just wondering.
He's all good. But yeah, so that was just terrible. It was like after 30 years of successful, peaceful demonstrations and protests on Cannabis Day, July 1st, here in the city of Vancouver, the new mayor, Mayor Ken Sim, decided he'd had enough of that. He didn't think that was going to be on his watch. And he spent tens of thousands of our dollars to try to prevent it from happening. And did a pretty damn good job, I must say.
Yeah.
Scared away most of the vendors.
Yeah.
But some of the hardcores stayed for the whole day and had, the 420 event, the traditional,
Stage
all of that. The
Yeah.
stage was set up outside of the fence. And we defied the cops all day. They were brutal. They were harassing. It was an absolute travesty and a fiasco that happened there, and I was not happy about it. So, BC Bud Day weekend is coming up.
Yeah.
We just had it.
We just had it. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, let's do 3 days. Let's not just go there on Monday when they're ready for us.
Yeah.
Let's go there Saturday and then maybe Sunday and then maybe Monday. And maybe go there Saturday, and if the heat is too much, we'll move locations and we'll go where the media is because they're not coming to see us apparently. But we didn't promote it very well.
No.
Because we didn't want to give them a heads up of what was
No.
happening.
No.
We had talked to a bunch of people, vendors and what have you, about hey, let's meet there on Saturday and go from there. But we really didn't get enough.
No.
We got enough to kind of fill the space and make it look like we were having a decent event there, and that was good. We put up a whole bunch of signs. We made dozens and dozens of signs.
A lot of signs, yeah.
So we had a sign making thing in the morning, and the signs were mostly targeted at Mayor Sim and what he did on the Cannabis Act and on the lack of access of proper dose edibles and those sorts of things. And then we put the signs up all around the park, out on the street, and at every tent. And, we just waited to see, are the cops going to come,
Yeah, they didn't.
Well, they did, sort of.
Well,
they sent
cop.
2 cruisers, came
Right.
by, and sort of tried to park out of sight, but of course we saw them.
Of course.
And we watched them discuss things. And then 3 of them came and stood over by the SkyTrain station and looked at us through their sunglasses and their stern faces. And we didn't stop what we were doing at all. We just carried right on. Glen FM was doing a fine job of keeping the vibes going.
Yeah.
And, all the people at the tents, they weren't scurrying around to hide their shit or nothing.
No.
I made sales. I'm sure lots of other people made sales with the cops standing right there watching.
Yeah.
Because, we're not going to be forced out like this. And they went away. So good on them.
Yeah. That was good.
And then there was Dan the Man. Dan the Man, the transit sergeant.
Oh, that was. Oh, yeah.
He came and
He's Dan the Man.
had a good look around, saw me, and I saw him, and we walked towards each other, and we kind of met in the middle there of all the tents and stuff. And he said, I thought you were you did a good job of speaking on Cannabis Day. And I said, oh, you were here, were you?
Mm-hmm.
He goes, yeah, he said, but you reminded me of my ex-wife. I said, oh dear. I said, but you used to love her, right? You loved her at one time. He said, well, but there you were, standing up there on stage telling me to leave. Because I did. I told those cops to go away. We didn't need them there. There was no violence for them to intervene with. We didn't need any peace officers. No. That they were harassing people, they were scaring people, they were intimidating people, and they were likely going to cause a riot if they didn't go away.
Yeah, they almost tried.
Yeah, well, they almost caused a riot.
Yeah. Had
this been an alcohol-fueled event, we would have had riots there that day.
Way worse.
Oh, man. Like they had in Toronto, I don't know if you know, a mini riot there, 9 people in hospital, some sort of a protest gone sideways. It wasn't about weed.
No, no, it wasn't.
No. But Dan and I had a really good chat about many different things. And he said he appreciated what I had to say there. He had missed my speech that had happened just before he showed up there.
Yeah.
I asked him, I said, did you hear what I just had to say, a few minutes ago? And he said, no, I just got here. But he said, what you did have to say on Cannabis Day, he said, I can't say that I disagree with what you had to say there. I said, well, here's what happened. We had a young man die here today at BC Bud Day, but we wouldn't let that happen. So we brought him back to life and saved him.
Yeah.
And the only reason he's alive right now is because we had our event here today.
Yeah.
If we hadn't have been here, he would have walked through the park like he was doing with his friends. He would have collapsed where he collapsed, and nobody would have been there to bring him back.
Yeah.
There was a few other drugged out people sitting around where it was that he collapsed. There was some people going in and out of SkyTrain that didn't care, weren't paying attention. You can't blame them. There's people laying like they're dead all over the place here. But Rosie jumped to action.
Yeah.
Yelled at me, we got a man down. I quickly went to my car to get my Narcan kit. By the time I got back, he'd already had the nasal version and 1 shot in his leg. And Rosie was basically on top of him, shaking him, slapping him, compressing his chest, giving him mouth to mouth. There was a couple other people there that were doing those things as well. Rosie wasn't alone in it.
Yeah.
But she was amazing. She deserves a commendation.
Michael, your Cookie Monster guy, was there.
Michael was there. Michael and I stood together there.
Yeah.
He'd already provided his Narcan kit to the things, and I stood there with mine.
Yeah.
And after that, the first nasal spray and the first Narcan shot did not bring this fellow's color back to his face. They took my kit and administered 2 more shots.
And that brought him back.
And the 4th one brought him back.
Wow.
And,
wow.
Well, and Rosie. It wasn't just the shot that brought him back. Rosie was in his face going, wake up, don't die, don't you dare die. It was powerful to watch.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Very powerful to watch. So the young man came to, gathered his senses a little bit, realized what was going on. The firemen were now on their way through the park to come to attend to him, and he wanted no part of it.
Yeah, he's gone.
So he managed to get up and stagger away, almost fell down a couple of times, staggering.
Wow.
I'm right there talking to him, going, buddy, don't leave. Talk to these people. They're not going to force you to go to hospital, but you need to be checked out. And he says, no, I don't. I said, you don't even know what happened to you.
Yeah.
You weren't here.
Your dad.
We were here. We know what happened to you. You need to go talk to the firemen. And he wouldn't do it.
No,
he walked away.
Yeah.
And so he came back later, and he was very, very grateful that that people did what they did.
Yeah.
And but that prompted me to go take the microphone.
I didn't see him come back. Wow, he came back.
He was back, but he didn't come right into where the tents were. He stayed over by the SkyTrain station, and he had one of our people come and tell us that, hey, he's here, and he wants to say thank you very much.
Wow.
But before he got back, after he got up and left, I took the microphone. I made Glen FM pause for a few minutes.
He didn't make me. It was voluntary.
Well, I'm in control anyway, right?
There's no guns involved.
There's no force, no coercion, just when this song is done, I got things I need to say.
There you go.
Well, that was one of the great things about Glen FM, was he was able to respond to everything that was going on, to allow for, you know, what needed to happen on the mic to happen on the mic.
Yeah.
The songs that you played were very timely.
Yeah.
Although I have one complaint.
What?
Well, you see, I get some songs stuck in my head and I don't like it very much. You know,
yeah.
They go around and round and
I
round.
get that too.
And I got to figure out how to get them out of there. So I have a go-to to get. Well, there's one song. Echo Beach is a nice song, but I don't like it in my head like that, and it runs in a circle and it won't get out.
Yeah.
So what I use for that is Chilliwack's "Gone, Gone, Gone."
Yeah, I got that. Yeah.
So. Gone, 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 she's been gone so long, she's been gone, gone, gone so
right?
long.
Yeah.
And the song is gone, and I don't mind the Chilliwack song, and it doesn't hang around for long either anyway, it's all good.
My way of...
But you played Gone, Gone, Gone,
Yeah.
and then you played Echo Beach right away, the next song after that. I'm going, no, that's the wrong order. That's the wrong order.
I didn't know.
You didn't know, how could you know?
No.
How could you know? But, yeah, that was fun. But anyway, you know, once we had that...
I usually play my favorite album.
Oh, yeah?
Right, so, because like I have to go out and listen to it all the time, so when I'm going home, it's the last music I'm listening to out of the night. I don't play my
You don't play the mix, you play an album.
I play an album instead, because it doesn't repeat in my head then that way.
Well, you played different artist after different artist after different artist all day long. The most amazing songs that are in the world were there. I don't think there was anything that didn't get played that I wanted to hear for sure. And you never played a song twice.
Nope.
So you did an amazing job. You should be a DJ.
I should be a DJ.
Well, you are now. You're a professional DJ. You worked the last event here. You got paid for it and everything, and great accolades at the end. So
Thank you.
You have a resume now.
There you go.
If you want to be a DJ, you can be a
play music.
You'd be a cool DJ, man.
Yeah.
You would be a cool DJ.
I just don't have the mixing board and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, you got the good morning, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
You know, I mean, that's all
Who
DJ
wants to
stuff.
dance?
Yeah, exactly. You know. So yeah, on a more serious note, you know, once that event had happened, I mean, it really hit me kind of hard. Of course, like I said, it was a very powerful thing to watch somebody die, and then be saved and brought back like that. And so I took the mic to say what I think we were all thinking, and that is that that's why we're here. Mm-hmm. This is what we're doing here. That, you know, we are demanding reasonable access to cannabis for a variety of reasons, but probably the biggest in our world right now is for people that are involved in the drugs that young man had taken too much of. And we want to have an option easily, readily available for them in the marketplace. And then I believe a large percentage of people would choose the cannabis option over the opiate and hard drug option.
Do you know the two nurses that are down here? They've been named for the Order of BC.
I didn't hear that.
So to work down here on the downtown east side. We should maybe have them.
I think they've been here. I think we've talked to them.
Had they? Yeah, maybe we should have talked to them
brought them by.
Because they didn't even know what the Order of BC was.
Right?
So they had to look it up, right? So they're apparently going to get the Order of BC for all the work that they've done during HIV when nobody else would do any work and stuff like that.
Right.
So and now that they're on the downtown east side helping to prevent opioid overdoses. You guys are the same age.
Where's our accommodation?
Yeah, I know.
Well, you know, we've been here for 6.5 years.
They've been working along since AIDS, right? So
yeah, I'm not taking anything away. I'm not taking anything away from them. I don't need to rain on their parade. Well, not taking nothing away from them.
No.
But you know, when it comes to people and groups that have been actively trying to address these situations here on the downtown east side, the CSP and the people that have worked for the CSP also deserve those commendations.
Yeah.
No question in my mind.
People's lives just like
that. But we get no love here.
No.
We get no love. We get lots of love from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Tons of love from the neighborhood.
Yes, we can't say we don't get no love.
Well, but from governments.
From
governments, we get no love.
Yeah.
And maybe I can't even say that. I mean, hell, the city of Vancouver, maybe it was just giving it lip service, but they did pass a motion to support low barrier access, and they were targeting what we were doing in that motion.
In that motion.
But when push came to shove, they didn't really support us. Can't even really say that, I guess. Members of City Council did write a very supportive letter for the CSP. It was part of our application to Health Canada when that happened, because that is what happened, is the city passed a motion. We met with the city. We could get a storefront and not have people have to line up for hours through all kinds of weather. And so we got the storefront and we started doing our thing there, waiting for city staff to come and approve us. And instead, city licensing comes along and says, oh, you need a license from the province before you can do that. And then it was like, oh, no, I guess it has to be the federal government, because obviously the provincial license isn't going to accommodate what you're doing, and you can't fit in with what they require. So there is a special licensing and exemption division of Health Canada, and that's where you need to apply. So we did. And it wasn't hard to apply. It wasn't like we were making something up. It wasn't like we were trying to invent something, conjure up a way that maybe cannabis could help people. We had by that time over 3.5 years of finding out for ourselves exactly what worked, documenting it, being able to put it into an application along with about a 90-minute video montage of the people that had been helped, giving small, short testimonials, every one of which could bring you to tears. We've included a lot of the science that had been going on, because there's lots of science out there showing that where cannabis is an option, opioid use declines.
Oh.
And that cannabis, especially in the form of proper dose edibles, can get people through withdrawal. All that science is there. So we included that in our application. We had letters from City Council, like I said. We had letters from Dr. M.J. Malloy, one of the foremost experts in the field with respect to cannabinoid substitution, and also Professor Zachary Walsh, the foremost expert in the field. A great letter from Dr. Walsh. All of that part of our application, along with details about how our supply was happening, the way that we were dispensing it to people, the collaboration between the Healing Wave Dispensary side and the Cannabis Substitution Program side, the fact that we had all these members, 250 of them at the time of the application, that were able to get proper dose edibles, 420 milligrams every 4 days for free, that we had compiled a waiting list of 500 other people that wanted to be part of the program that we couldn't include, because handcuffed the way we were without having a proper license, still having to rely on donations, not really being able to fundraise properly, being a non-legal entity, we weren't able to add those 500 people. We stopped taking names. We still get people almost every day coming and saying, could I get on that list?
Yep.
And we say, sorry, until the government allows us to be what we can be, we have to just be this. And being just this, which is not working out of a storefront because the city wouldn't license that and threatened the landlord, so we're working in an RV. That's pretty strange, isn't it?
Side of a street.
Can you imagine that? We have an RV, so we don't pull up and clandestinely offer this stuff to people. We leave it there all the time.
Yep.
It's there 24/7. We put big signs out. We're open 8 hours every day, 7 days a week, and we put signs out front and back so that everybody can see what we're doing. We call it the low barrier access point. It's a harm reduction strategy. Cannabis saves lives. All of that is on our signs. They know all about us. It's not like we've managed to fly under the radar here in Vancouver, although you would think that's the case with respect to the media, who doesn't give us very much love at all. But as far as the police and the City Hall and the CSU, they know about us. They know all about us. They probably know more about us than I know about us. They probably got more on me than I know there is, They've spent large amounts of money doing investigations. They're probably still investigating. I'm sure the Crown prosecutors who are going to be in court, because we've turned their charges for selling without a license into a charter challenge against them and Health Canada, I'm sure they're actively spending taxpayer dollars every day to try to get some dirt on me. They say in their disclosure that I must be a greedy opportunist and I must be stopped. Well, I don't know what they mean by greedy opportunist. They say it in a bad way. I had to roll that around and go, well, hell, I'm an opportunist, that's for sure. I do look for opportunities to further my goals in life.
You're not greedy. You're not driving around.
No. But there again, it depends on what you mean by greedy.
What they mean by this?
I'm not into a luxury lifestyle.
No.
I do not have a luxury lifestyle. I work 7 days a week. I can't go away. I can't take a holiday. I'm constantly working on another letter to somebody or addressing somebody somewhere or going to see somebody somewhere. I work hard. I have to say, I think I'm one of the hardest working activists that there are. I don't stop. And I'm greedy. I want it all. Come on, Kevin, it's okay. It's a live show, but you can have what you want.
What's this?
That's it. That's just one.
Oh, good. Little interruption lets people know that it's not taped and in a can, and the truth here as best we can from our hearts. And so, like I say, it depends on what you want, What I want is not a luxury lifestyle, although I wouldn't mind. That sounds pretty good.
That'd be nice, yeah, you and me.
That'd be nice. I'd like holidays. I'd like to be able to go and maybe rent a boat or something and go out on the water, do some fishing, spend some time in a cabin. I'm over the retirement age right now, so I got those sort of thoughts in my head about what I would be doing if I retired. And I have dreams of retiring one day. It's not a matter of reaching a particular age. It's not a matter of putting aside enough money. It's a matter of I need to achieve my goals before I retire. And that's what I'm greedy about, because I want that to happen. I've put 25 years of real good hard work into this, and more than that throughout the rest of my life in other avenues of activism. But I wasn't a full-time activist. I never thought of myself as an activist at all. But I did in the last couple of decades decide that I was going to quit my job and do this full-time and set my sights on a goal that I felt was achievable and absolutely crucial that we achieve it. And at this point, it's been framed low barrier access to cannabis. And that's on both sides of the marketplace ledger there. That low barrier into the marketplace as a provider and low barrier as from the consumer side to be able to get what they need without the barriers of high prices and other things that are there. That you can't even get proper dose edibles in this so-called legalization, which is stupid as hell, eh?
It is.
I mean, you're going to legalize cannabis to the point where you have stores all over the place. You're selling it. But the number one, absolutely above all else, the number one usage of importance with cannabis was the people using it for medical reasons.
Yeah.
And that was all about proper dose edibles. So you're going to legalize cannabis, but you're going to not have the proper dose edibles. You're going to leave all of those people to try to fend for themselves in a world where now you're shutting off access to those things, because we used to have illegal stores that were tolerated, that provided thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people. We had 150 to 180, hard to tell because they weren't registered, they weren't licensed, of storefronts in Vancouver alone. Lots more up the coast, lots more in Alberta, lots more in Ontario. And they had, each of them, thousands of members. Now, some of these people had memberships in more than one of the clubs, but not too many people had memberships in all 180 of them or whatever it was. And they all had their unique clientele from their particular areas or because of their particular way of providing the service that people like. They all had hundreds and thousands, and some of them had tens of thousands of members.
Yeah.
And the primary objective of those members was not the flower, it was the edibles. That was the thing. Go ask any of those dispensary owners and they'll tell you that was the thing that people really needed to get, was the edibles. Mm-hmm. Flower you can get anywhere. Flowers for sale right now, all kinds of different places. Up on the corner over there, it's at the art gallery, it's on Granville Street. There's even still a couple storefronts that are providing cannabis without a license. They have good lawyers. I don't know what their thing is, how they're, they've been threatened or already raided and fined by the CSU, but they're continuing on. Whatever it is, there's still a handful of those here. But the vast majority were forced away.
Yeah.
So all of these poor people that had serious illnesses that cannabis was a lifesaver and a life changer for were now out of luck with legalization.
Yeah.
So we can't stop until we've looked after those people, because those were the people we were looking after in the first place. I was never an activist to make weed legal so that I could smoke weed.
Yeah.
That was never it, because I was smoking weed all the time before and after I decided to quit my job and do this full time. I smoked weed since I was 15 years old. I had no trouble getting it. I had some trouble with the law early on, but I got smarter, I got older, I got more resources to be able to get what I needed. And so I had no trouble. In fact, same with all my peers and contemporaries, that we had no trouble getting weed and smoking weed. It was all over the place. They said that cannabis estimated to be a $7 to $9 billion industry just in British Columbia. Mm-hmm. Most of it being consumed domestically. So there was a lot of people smoking weed.
Yeah.
Literally millions of people in Canada breaking the criminal law for 100 years here.
And BC had the highest, probably, right?
Quebec is up there too.
Right,
they got
they
a lot of weed smokers in
they
Quebec.
say that statistically,
Ontario's so huge, right?
It's hard. Yeah.
So it's hard to know. And because it was illegal, people aren't coming forward and saying, hey, you know what? I got a container buried in my backyard I'm growing weed in and nobody knows. So I'm telling you, Mr. Government, because you're doing a survey and you want to find out how many of us there are.
Yeah.
No. That did not happen. What we learned during all that prohibition was how to hide what you were doing.
Yeah.
Like not to tell anybody, especially anybody from the government, no matter how trustworthy they seem to be, however nice the policeman is, you don't tell him that.
No.
We learned all of that, man. We learned.
Yeah.
We learned guerrilla growing. We learned basement, closet, tent growing. We learned
Truck
underground.
Trailers,
Oh, man.
18-wheeler trailers growing in there.
Yeah, while driving around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, yeah.
Boats and barges.
Yeah.
We learn. And you do learn. And you're going to learn. If the government is coming after you and they're going to penalize you in bad, serious ways, you're going to learn how to avoid that. And you're going to talk about it with your other contemporaries about how they can avoid it too. And you're going to go to jail at some point. And you're going to learn in there how to get away with it. And everybody learned how to get away with it.
Yeah.
And most people weren't telling government that they were doing it, no matter what survey or phone call they got asking them. So, $7 to $9 billion estimated business in BC here. 7 to 9 billion every 12 months.
Wow.
Every 12 months.
Wow.
That's a lot of doses of cannabis.
Well, they say that people live in BC live the longest. I guess because we're smoking the most cannabis.
But if you're living in Quebec, it seems longer.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it seems.
It must be the winters there.
No, it's the government's.
It's the government's. Yeah,
Sorry
I'm surprised
to
that
all
the
my
guy-
brothers and sisters in Quebec. I love you.
No surprise that
But,
the government has 10 milligram edibles when my grandmother or mom or somebody else's friend can just bake some brownies. It'd be way more than fucking 10 milligrams,
my God.
right? That's like,
If the government was really so worried, they're supposed to be all thinking about us, right? This is all supposed to be about public safety and public interest here. Health Canada, of all the government divisions, is really supposed to be concerned about the safety and well-being of Canadians. So if they were really concerned about these proper dose edibles and the dangers involved to the point where they refuse to give us a license to provide them to people here or anywhere, because you have to have a doctor supervising your intake of those things. You go to your doctor to say, hey, this Friday I plan to consume a 40-pounder of some good vodka. You got any recommendations for me about how I should dose that?
We should have 2.5 grams of cocaine here and then in your edible, and this one you can have and carry around with you. This one we have to have a doctor's note from you.
Yeah. You can't be doing
Let's
these
do some
things.
visual here.
How are those gummies? Where are they? These things here,
Yeah, we have
dangerous as hell.
Yeah, gotta give you. We gotta have a doctor's note, and then we want to give you one of those.
This or fentanyl.
Yeah.
This or alcohol.
Or-
this or commercial tobacco.
Or
and
cocaine.
you name any of them.
Heroin.
All of them. This is safer than any of them.
Yeah.
You can't OD on this to death.
No.
You can OD on this to misery.
Yeah.
You
But
know?
the government will give you any good,
So
any
to
edible,
protect
but
your
they'll
ass-
they'll give you free drugs though.
To protect your ass, they're only going to sell you 10 milligrams at a time. You could still do 100, but you got to eat 10 of those little chocolate bars.
Yeah, at $10 a piece.
Like, that's healthy for you.
Yeah.
Oh my God. A doctor is going to supervise your use and tell you what the right dosage is.
Yeah. No.
It's easy to tell a person what the right dosage is. You start low.
And find your own.
And then you work up until you find the right dose.
Yeah.
And no doctor can take a blood sample and tell you what that dose is going to be.
Yeah.
They can't do an EKG on you and say, well, according to all of this, yeah, your final destination on the dose trip is going to be about 50 milligrams per time. No, they can't.
No. You got to find out yourself.
50 milligrams is way too much for some people, and it will always be way too much for that person. For whatever reason, that's just who they are. They could build a tolerance. But if they're going to casually use cannabis once a month at a party or something, and they're going to use the edibles, their dose is always going to be 25 milligrams. And that's going to get them where they want to be, and 50 milligrams is going to be too much for them. It's just the way it is. But no doctor can tell you that other than to tell you what I just told you right now.
I just did the most I've ever done. That was the 250. I took one of those cupcakes. I ate
And
the
you
icing.
licked the icing
I
off
ate
it.
the icing one night.
Good man.
And then I took the cupcake and I split it in half. And I had the other half that's 250, and I had another 250.
So you had 500, eh?
Well, no, just 3 nights. 250,
Oh, over the course of 3 nights.
250, right? So yeah, and thank you very much, Misty. They were awesome. But that's the most I've ever taken as an edible, 250 milligrams.
And of course, you wouldn't recommend that to someone who never had edibles.
No, I did fine. I expected to be maybe one to feel like I wanted to green out, but I was all happy and laughing. And,
Yeah, well, because you've built a tolerance. You've taken, those kind of...
I take 100 milligrams every night.
Every night. So,
Every night.
You can tolerate that. But there's very few people that would tolerate that having never used them before.
Yeah.
They would go on a nasty trip of wondering whether they were going to die or not,
Because
with their head feeling like about this big, and swimming inside there.
Yeah.
And it's not fun. It's not
That's
fun
why we
at
say
all.
go low and go slow. You want
And
to
I
have
don't
a good time.
And I don't
go
blame
low,
Health
go slow.
Canada for being interested in that.
Yeah.
Of course they should be.
Yeah.
And of course there's things that they could do about that.
Yeah.
You can't do anything, Health Canada, about people growing their own plants and making their own edibles of whatever strength they want to make them and doing whatever they want with them. The only thing you can do about that, Health Canada, is to have an advertising campaign to make sure it becomes public knowledge, common knowledge. Everybody who's going to get some cannabis, make some edibles, or get some edibles has heard it, understands that you need to start low and go slow until you find the right dose. There needs to be humorous, creative, catchy advertisements to educate the public about the edibles. You could maybe throw in a bit about concentrates too. Concentrates will not, unless you're talking about concentrating it into an edible. But if you're talking about just inhaling the vapors from the resin glands in the concentrate of hash or shatter or butter or live rosin or whatever it is, if you're going to combust and inhale those cannabinoids in those concentrates, if you're not used to it, you might green out. You need to be told about that. That needs to be there.
Yeah.
So there's a role to play for our government in the public availability and use of cannabis. And that is to have the information out there about the potential of edibles to put you on a very bad trip that won't kill you,
Yeah.
but you won't enjoy it, and you probably don't do it again afterwards, depending. But they need to be involved in making that public knowledge. And if proper dose edibles are going to be for sale in stores, which they absolutely need to be, then requirements about proper labeling for dosage and with those cautions should be on there. They still can't do anything about people that are growing their own at home and making edibles out of them, and maybe they make too much, make them too powerful, maybe they take too much, maybe they don't get them out of the reach of their children and all the rest of that. Nothing could ever be done about that. If Health Canada and the Canadian government had the ability to make sure that nobody did that at home, then we would be living under an extremely totalitarian rule, and it would not be much fun at all.
And another thing is, a child could get a hold of your alcohol and get alcohol poisoning.
And they do regularly.
And die.
Yep.
So a child could get a hold of your edibles and green out and not die.
Right.
Right?
Either way, you don't want your kid getting into your stash.
No, but I'm just saying that.
But, you know, what should the most concern be about?
Yeah, one's going to kill him and one's
well,
not.
that's why
right?
I said, do you need to have your doctor's supervision for consuming that fifth of vodka on the Friday night?
No.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, do you need to have the government telling you that you can't have a medicine cabinet that has alcohol in it that's not locked tight? Like it has to be out of sight, out of reach? No. It's good advice. It's really good advice. If you've got young kids and you've got hard alcohol and prescription medication for that matter, and
even
cigarettes for that
medication,
matter, and pesticides and numerous other things as well, keep them out of reach of your kids as best you can. It's hard to do.
Mine's above the stove. Right?
Yeah, keep
right
them up high.
Yeah.
You know, Isabel, she'd climb up on a fucking chair and get that if she wanted to now.
But she knows not.
But not every kid knows not to.
Yeah.
My point there is that it's really, really hard to keep that stuff out of your kids' reach.
Yeah.
They will figure out that you're trying to hide something or keep something from them.
Yes.
That'll become their focus. They will become creative. Hopefully, they're good kids with smart brains and they can get creative about how they're going to get some of that. Stop people from, having that happen is ludicrous and insane. What are you going to have a camera in every room of your house that the government is monitoring with their AI to make sure that nobody disobeys or does anything dangerous?
No. AI.
That's the future.
No.
That is the future. That's probably actually going on in some people's homes right now when they've got Siris or whoever it is or, all these different computers around their house that are listening to everything that's being said.
Yeah.
And who knows, in the future it's probably got video capabilities too. Who knows? Anyway, we don't want this. Nobody wants this. You can understand right away. That's not a good thing.
No.
I don't want my government person to be watching a TV screen of me, doing my thing in my house.
Yeah, cooking your dinner.
Having
or
sex,
your
taking a shower, taking a shit.
Yeah.
No, of course we don't.
What toilet paper does he use?
Yeah. Are you using the government-approved toilet paper? We're putting this camera in your bathroom to make sure.
Yeah.
We're monitoring all your bills and all of your expenditures in our cashless society to make sure that you're buying that government toilet paper and not the underground toilet paper. This is how ridiculous this is. And if they're going
to use that hemp stuff.
Exactly.
I know.
It does tie back to cannabis. All the rage coming up will be cannabis-based toilet paper, and the government's not going to get their cut.
Yeah.
So they're going to ban it.
Yeah. You can't use hemp.
And they're coming into your bathroom. It was the senior Trudeau who said, with respect to people's sexual preferences, the government has no business in people's bedrooms.
Yeah.
They have no business in your bathroom, and they have no business in your grow room. They have no business there. And if they're doing business there, then we are far, far, far from free.
Did you know that Sophie and Justin just broke up?
Yeah, Sophie's on the market. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I was thinking about getting a new suit.
You know what? Actually, it's
That's
not,
bad.
It's not very good because apparently, if she was still married to him, she could testify in the ethics thing that he's having. But now that they're separated, she doesn't have to testify. So
I thought you couldn't compel your wife to testify against you.
No, that's maybe it is a murder or a criminal charge, but whatever that ethics things that he's going through, right?
Oh, so this means she doesn't have to
answer questions because she's not with him anymore.
Not that we're saying there could be something like that going on.
No,
they wouldn't do that.
That's why, right?
No, they wouldn't do that.
Yeah. And then watch them get back together and see, you know,
for the kids,
for the kids. Yeah. So she doesn't have to answer questions now from the ethics committee or whatever it was.
I lost my drink.
Oh, and there's three more on the table.
It's right here.
It's right there.
Sneaks out every once in a while. Well, that's crazy too.
I know, eh?
But no, they have no business in our homes at all. In fact, a man's house is supposed to be his castle.
It's supposed to be 91.
You know, they've got to have absolute solid evidence that there's some crime going on in your home for them to be able to come in there, and they have to have that warrant and all actually in order.
Toilet paper, that's a crime.
Unfortunately, you know, we got so twisted up in this country. Maybe we're just weak as a government, I don't know, but so twisted up that 100 years ago they made it okay for them to come into your palace and see what plants you're growing. Not because people were growing fentanyl and it was escaping from their gardens and into other people's gardens, and now people were dying of fentanyl because you had this dangerous plant going. No, not dangerous at all. In fact, you're still allowed to grow roses, and you're allowed to grow all these other toxic and poisonous plants.
Poppies. You can grow poppies too.
I don't consider poppies to be toxic and poisonous. I consider it to be medicine. You can take it and concentrate it, and you can eventually end up with a concentrate so powerful.
Isn't it heroin or something?
Sure. Yeah. You can take opium.
Yeah,
that's
opium.
What you do.
It's opium. Yes.
And opium is it's not relatively benign because it's still addictive. Because of the way that it operates within the human body, that it forms little networks of neural connections and things that you have to, like when you're using the next amount, you have to now refill. It's quite the science, but it's why it's physically addictive. The mechanics behind the opioids interaction with the human body means that you have to go through a physical withdrawal from using it that is very uncomfortable and painful, to say the least.
Yeah.
Now, when you take that opium and you condense it about 200 times, you get heroin.
Yeah.
A very, very powerful painkiller.
Yeah.
You're having your leg amputated, that's probably what you want for less than 3 weeks, but a short period of time. And then wean off of it quickly. Not a substance people need to be on for long periods, because then you have to go through the withdrawal to get off of it.
Yeah.
And it has to have some other long-term consequences, but not many. If you were using pure heroin, pure opium, it doesn't hurt the body terribly much to be using that. It might disrupt some of your eating and sleeping patterns, which can be detrimental to your health, but it doesn't have that serious harm to your internal organs that happens when you mix it. When you mix it with fillers, and you mix it with other compounds, that stuff becomes very dangerous, and that's why people end up with skin lesions, and they're scratching, and they've got bugs in them, and the your bowels seize up on you, and you get lots of nasty cramps and headaches and things. It's not good. The drugs that are out on the street, bumped, at every handler who tries to make a little more profit out of it by finding some other white powder that he can put in with this. That's just so common. Everybody knows that it gets boosted every step of the way. Dangerous stuff.
I think they were cutting coke when I was doing it with baby laxatives back then.
Yeah.
Or
coke got cut with lots of different things, and as a user you could tell.
Yeah.
For sure, because it had different effects.
Well, I was one who was taught how to cook, so you could definitely tell. You could cook with ammonia, and ammonia would kill all the cut. You would only get a cocaine rock. But if you cooked with baking soda would bring all the cut and the coke together to make that rock. So there's a difference.
There is.
Yeah.
So back to these edibles and the government's stance on the edibles. So people want the higher dose edibles than what they're able to get in the government stores.
Yeah.
If they want to have an edible experience, They should start at the 10 milligrams that's in that one serving at the store, and then see what they're going to do from there. But you wouldn't just buy the one
No.
of that. You would buy 2, 3, 4 of that. Now it's expensive as
Yeah.
well. That's a very expensive little
A funny
trip.
friend.
You know, the 40 pounder of vodka is going to be a lot less than what you're going to need to get 50 or 60 milligrams from a government store of their edibles. So people, because they're not available, more people are going to be finding other sources for them.
Yeah.
More people are going to be trying to make their own.
Mm-hmm.
If it was dangerous, Health Canada, you're forcing people to engage in the dangerous behavior way more so than what would happen if they were available in storefronts, proper dosages with proper labeling and warnings and cautions on the label. Way more danger to the Canadian public being imposed on them by Health Canada, by the Cannabis Act. So they're going to review the Cannabis Act now.
Are they?
Coming right up. In fact, unfortunately, maybe, probably, they're going to have that done by late summer, early fall.
Next year.
This
This
year.
year. Oh,
This
really?
year.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
going to come up with some new review of the Cannabis Act. Now, I told Health Canada
Who told them?
very clearly that the Cannabis Act itself is its own biggest barrier to reaching the stated goals of the Cannabis Act.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that sinks in with
They're
them.
just going to tell us how many grams we can have in a license. That's what they're just going to come out with, because they've already told me I'm only allowed to have 1 to 3.
Well, that's part of what they're going to be talking about,
Yeah, that's what
is how much doctors should be allowing their medical patients to access.
That's stupid.
Well, meanwhile, you can go buy 30 grams of weed every single day. In fact, you can go to multiple stores in any
I
day
smoke that ounce if you want
and buy
to.
the whole amount. Go home, make edibles out of it if you want, whatever you want to do,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
No, this is, they are so hypocritical, it's criminal. This is criminal hypocrisy that's going on here. The Cannabis Act, because, so, we've talked about it on the show numerous times here. The legal marketplace is losing lots of business. There's lots of the shares of the companies going down and down and down in value. They're being rescheduled off the main stock market because they don't have high enough value to their shares. All of that money is money that was put in by the people that bought the shares, used by the people at the tops of these companies, and then lost because, you know, they tried to do it right. They decided that they had to have nice vehicles for all the management because, you know, they've got, if they want a market share, they've got to look good. So they rented expensive offices, actually bought a lot of real estate, many of these companies, with that money from the shareholders. They had a whole bunch of greenhouses built, warehouses built, hired a whole bunch of people, and then, can't sell enough cannabis to make it all work, laying everybody off. You know, we're losing money. Shareholders are now on the hook for all this money. The guys at the top, for the most part, are walking away, you know, laughing
With
all the way to the
bonuses.
bank.
With bonuses.
With bonuses. That's a lot of where that money went.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, we couldn't turn a profit because we had to give the CEO another $2.5 million as a bonus, eh?
Yeah.
So, but the governments are the other players in all of this. There's the producers and the regulations that they have on them that makes it so that they have to not make very much profit on what they're doing. There's the competition that means that they're all kind of lobbying to be able to sell it cheaper, to be able to undercut the next guy, even though they don't have many profits in it. And only the big boys survive that. There's all the other friends along the way that do the packaging or do the handling and the transporting and all the rest of the security, this and that. But the guys in the government that are behind all of this, that are making all of these regulations and rules, they just take their cut off the top of whatever it is and they don't care about the rest. And if they do care about the rest, it seems like they care about the rest not even doing very well, that they don't want it to. I'm sure they're still, to this day, having meetings constantly trying to figure out how to put down the medical value of cannabis and not have to admit to it.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to because there's a lot of us.
That's why they're shaking in their boots.
Yeah.
Because that boat has sailed a long time ago. The studies are now there.
Yeah.
More coming all the time. Go to PubMed, see for yourself, peer-reviewed studies. Cannabis is not dangerous.
No.
Doesn't make people violent. Should not be used, or you should not be using any criminal laws to try to prevent people's access from it. This is all just a smokescreen for the corporate financial bastards that want to monopolize and
having a disposable life where things will break really quickly and you have to buy more and stuff like that. So, yeah.
All those reasons I mentioned at the top of the show, that the cannabis is kept illegal because it satisfies this industry, that industry, and the next industry. One of the ones in there was the open-mindedness that happens when you use cannabis, the contemplation that happens. You start thinking about things. You start looking at, well, this doesn't seem right, you know?
Yeah.
They want me to strap on a gun and go get overseas somewhere and lay down in a ditch and start shooting at other people I don't even know that are shooting at me, and they don't even know me.
Yeah, I know, eh? Yeah.
And all of this is why? Well, they sold it during the Second World War and the First World War about it being about freedom. That's how they sold it. Yeah, maybe there was some of that going on. Hard to say. I mean, I'm sure it was something to do with freedom of who got to run which businesses and own which oil fields. A lot of that freedom was at stake there during the wars, and we've come to understand that now, looking at the different wars that happen and why they happen. There seems to be a lot of different natural resources like oil involved in these places.
And grain.
You know, the things that are worth money.
Yeah,
you
grain.
know?
Yeah.
These big governments are willing to get in there and help fight for democracy when there's access to these natural resources at stake. And they don't do it for free.
No.
You know, like the U.S. doesn't go in and help bail out some country that's having a coup against it, you know, without, that's a debt, right? That country, when they get their leader that the United States likes or Russia likes or whichever side of the issue you're on, when those people get the right people back in power there, well, they owe a great debt to cover the costs of ousting the rebels, you know, whatever it is. You know, I'm sorry to be cynical. It's not my fault.
I'm going to steal a joint from you because I didn't roll enough.
Well, I'm not even sharing this.
Well, that's all right. I'm used to that. There's
420 sessions in other parts.
There's other people that do that too. So some people just smoke alone, and it's just common for them not to share it because
that's me now,
right? Yeah,
that's me now. I do share, but it's not my first instinct. That's not my go-to. My go-to is not to think about it.
It must be the hippie in me to always want to share.
No, it's that you didn't spend enough time around cannabis culture.
That's what it was. Okay, it changed you, did you? Did it? Yeah.
Big time.
What? You seen somebody?
Everybody's got their own joint.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's got their own joint. They're all sitting at their station doing their things there. You walk over to talk to somebody. They got a joint going. You got a joint going. Every once in a while, you go, "Hey, you want to try some of this? I'll try some of yours."
Yeah, try some of this.
But it's not your default. Yeah. It's not your go-to. Mostly, it's that you're just smoking weed. They're smoking weed. They don't need any of yours, and you don't think about it.
I'll reach out and give you here. You want to try it?
Absolutely. I was conditioned to that my whole life until 20-some years ago when I started hanging around with cannabis culture people. Prior to that, I'd be with someone who didn't smoke weed, and after every toke, I would still be trying to give it to him right through the whole joint. It's instinct. It's like that's what you do.
Is like that. He smokes his own joint.
Is that right?
Or he'll smoke a bit of it, and then he'll let you have the rest.
Right.
He won't go back to it. Right.
Well, and then there became the whole thing about the East Van. Stuff that might, you don't want to share joints because we had the herb school right here at Main and Hastings, right? And there was some people that would, continue the conversation about, do you really want to be sharing joints with people who, are eating garbage and, it never deterred me. I wouldn't say never.
Have you shared with them before? Did anything happen?
Nothing had happened.
Well, then, of course, you would continue to do that.
I never got any of these sicknesses that people, and I'm not saying that that's a good idea.
No.
I don't really know.
We all know heat kills germs too. So when you're pulling this, you're pulling some heat. So if there may be anything in there, you may whatever.
And there was people that would do this,
Yeah.
So they wouldn't actually put their lips on the thing that somebody else had their lips on.
Yeah.
I probably naively and stupidly would take this position that other people's germs are just going to make my immune system stronger. Don't know if that's true or not. But
we're still here though on this
that
planet.
became my sort of stance on it. And there's just such a spiritual, friendly, almost loving exchange that happens in the sharing of a joint.
Yeah.
And probably especially when it's somebody that's mostly a stranger, somebody that you're encountering, on the streets here on the downtown east side.
Yeah.
That when you're sharing that joint with that person, there's a real energy that's going with that, So I didn't want to lose that, and I wasn't willing to give up on that. But I have to admit there was just a couple of times, just a handful if that, over the many years that I've been involved down here, where I've taken a good look at the person that I'm giving the joint to.
Yeah.
And I just say, yeah, you can keep that.
Keep that. I've done that a couple times.
Keep that, yeah. But that's rare for me. It really is rare for me. I'm much more trusting than I probably should be, based on the possibilities. But I don't know. There's both extremes of that.
Yeah.
There's these people out there wearing masks in situations where you just don't need to wear the mask.
There was that commercial. I'd like to share the Coke with the world, or the world with the Coke.
I like to buy the world
There you
a
go.
Coke.
Now we like to buy the
Perfect
world a
harmony.
joint and have a perfect harmony. Right?
Yeah.
I know.
100%.
Yeah. Let's change that to a joint instead, right?
So yeah,
Coca-Cola is not good for you.
Coke is not good for you, probably. Not in excess, anyway. That's for damn sure. I don't know about
Imagine if the world
a little sip here
had
and there.
cannabis and it wasn't so illegal. Would it be as bad as what we have now? Would
Would the world be as bad as what it is now? Or
would
there
we be more mellow? Would we maybe not be having as many wars because we're using cannabis? I don't know.
Oh fuck yeah!
You think so?
Oh fuck yeah!
You think so?
There's no way around that. I don't think.
No.
I mean, there's some bad people who still smoke weed and
There
do
will always
bad,
be
and
the
do
opposite,
bad
yes.
things,
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, many bad people became good people by smoking weed.
When there's an alternate timeline where the world didn't have alcohol, it just had cannabis.
Well, with all the possibilities. You want to get into the universe now?
I want to go there.
Although it seems like our solar system is extremely rare and unique in many different ways, and our planet with its electromagnetic field and all the different aspects of it, the combinations of the remnants of supernovae that are here on this planet that combine together, that do that when the conditions are right. That the conditions being right are rare, and that the conditions being stable for long, billions of years, periods of time, to allow for that to happen, for the chemistry to become biology, to become life. This might be extremely, extremely, extremely rare in the universe. It seems to me that it might be. The mechanisms of causing life to happen the way that it does, it's not simple and easy.
No.
But it's probably inevitable if everything is in its right place.
Yeah.
Which tells me, even though it's extremely rare, there is trillions of potential. There's 200 billion, they say, Earth-like planets just in this galaxy alone. Wow. And there's 2 trillion galaxies at least, and we don't know because we can only see so far.
Yeah, space is space.
So when you've got multiple trillions of galaxies and billions of possibilities within each of those galaxies, and then it happened here, it must have happened elsewhere over the billions of years. It must be happening somewhere out there.
Yeah.
But the distances are so vast.
I always liked Battlestar Galactica's theory that we were the 13th tribe, and the Battlestar Galactica were searching for us in order to be back together again. So.
Within a particular galaxy.
Yeah.
And, so that there was one intelligent species that arose and had to go into space and then broke off into these other ones, and then now they're trying to find them. That's a great story.
That's a nice story. I like that story.
Probably not happening just because the distances are so vast. but it's hard to know, and I may well be naive about the ability to fold space, but I've been trying.
I know.
I just can't get a hold of it, you
We
know.
haven't got that cannabis planet
And,
yet.
and the dimensions of different things, and maybe there's portholes, and maybe there's wormholes, and maybe you can go faster than light, but then if you start doing that, then a whole bunch of other weird shit happens, as we know from our mentor, Mr. Einstein. So I think it's very, very rare. That's all. But maybe, like you said there, you suggested that in an alternate universe,
Yeah.
all of these things happen. So we're not talking about in this universe with all of those possibilities. We're talking about a possibility of a connecting to some alternate universe where things that happen here also happen there, but they happen in reverse, or they happen to a point, or they happen differently.
The same people, just different lives.
Interesting speculation.
Right.
I don't know about any of it.
That's where they say you can't do anything during that timeline because you could interrupt something else, right?
If you manage to get there.
Yeah, if you manage to get there.
Well, now we're talking about going back in time. Same thing. You mean, do you kill your parents by mistake or on purpose? And then what happens to you? Who are you? Are you somebody? Because in the future timeline, you really don't exist anymore. Maybe you're in limbo and you can't go back. Or maybe if you do go back, maybe you're a ghost, or maybe you're a traveler that like the Saint Germain. You know Saint Germain?
No.
That's quite the story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's quite the.
But he went travel in time.
No, but I mean, there's evidence for everything. You can go on the internet and you can Google anything you want, and something will come up to back up whatever it is you just Googled it. Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
But there seems to have been this person, and maybe still is this person, this Saint-Germain.
Yeah.
Who didn't age. He stayed like 45 in appearance for a few hundred years.
Wow!
And he was an alchemist, and he was an amazing person with all of these different skills, and he had this laboratory or laboratories.
Yeah.
And he was famous to a degree. He hobnobbed with the rich and the powerful, and apparently he came up with an elixir of life. Who knows? Anyway,
but he's dead now, right?
Well, yes, he died, but did he?
I don't know. Did he?
Because maybe not.
Maybe not. Eh?
There's some evidence that he did, but then there's some evidence that there he is again. And in fact, not long after his death, there were all these noble people, like prominent people, saying that no, I was with him recently.
Gazer's asking you if you can send him some information on how cannabis works with drug addiction, so he can show our minority people and then they can see how it works.
Well, I would just go to Google, and then I would go to PubMed, and I would put in the keywords to get that.
He's in New Zealand.
I know, but he still has internet.
Would he have access to it?
Oh, I believe he would. Yeah,
well, I know certain countries.
That stuff should all be there,
right?
It's just a matter of doing proper Google searches, and actually these days you can do ChatGPT. I plan to ask that thing a lot of questions coming up here.
www.pubmed?
Yes, PubMed would have a lot of different things. And so what cannabis does is it replaces some of the need for the harder drugs, for the other drugs. There's components, there's cannabinoids within cannabis that are accentuators. They accelerate and amputate or amplify other substances. So people that are using these other substances find that they are able to use considerably less of those substances if they're using cannabis as well.
Yeah.
So there's that side of it. There's what we're primarily targeting here, and we're not really actually primarily targeting anything, because people come to us with whatever their needs and desires are, and they're trying to fulfill them here. And some people are trying to get off of the hard drugs, and they are paying attention to what we're saying about being able to use cannabis as an assist to get through withdrawal. So that because the edibles can really kind of put you to sleep. If you start low and go slow, and you get to that point where you're just like, wow, your head, you stop there, right? Stop there, because beyond there is the thick head and the swimming and the, oh my God, I'm going to die. But you can really get to a point where you just can't get off the couch. You are couch locked.
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing to have if you're trying to get off of hard drugs.
Yeah.
Both because if you could get off the couch, you might go and get some more of those hard drugs to deal with the pain that you're going through, but more because the pain is really seriously reduced, and you're just kind of sleepwalking through the pain, even though it's there.
And that's because your
it's not the
endocannabinoid
same.
system is part of pain control, right?
100%.
So if you're using edibles, it's activating itself and saying, okay, this is what we have to do to fix this so he's not in pain, or
exactly.
in pain,
It's definitely the body using it in a response that allows for the reduction and elimination of those other drugs.
So the sweat pains, the muscle pains are gone, the sweats are gone, people are sleeping, they're waking up hungry, they want to eat.
So there's two sides of the science, of course.
Yeah.
There's the actual mechanics of it. How does it work? What is it doing in there? Which receptors are being stimulated in which way, and all of that science. And then there's the studies where they interview people and they get information from people and they find out, and they follow people, they monitor people, and they find out on an individual basis, how it affects certain people. Because everybody's mechanics are different.
Yes.
And so that,
So do you think maybe cannabis, it knows what that person's body needs?
Exactly.
It knows, yes.
If you're deficient...
That's why it's different in different...
That's why it affects different people differently.
Together, right? You can group some people together, but it does affect people differently.
Yeah.
So cannabis is like a smart plant because it knows what your body needs at that moment.
And it requires some of your smartness too, because cannabis can be produced in so many different varieties and strains.
Yeah.
And some of them are much better at some things than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas
And there again, if you're taking off the cannabinoids, if you can isolate the CBG and the CBN, well, now you've got a real good sleep aid there.
Yeah.
And if you can isolate the CBD, well, now you've got something that's going to deal with pain and anxiety and those sorts of things. If you can isolate out the THC, now you can, enjoy some euphoria while you're trying to do whatever it is that you're trying to do. Some people need euphoria, believe me. There are occupations and people's lifestyles that are difficult to deal with.
Have you changed
happy
anybody's
joint
life
once in a
that
while?
was using meth?
Pardon me?
Have you changed anybody's life that was using meth?
All of the drugs. All of the drugs.
Okay, because that's what he's asking. Now
Yeah.
you're going to try to
All
go
the drugs.
do illegal growth so
fact,
you can help our people with meth.
In fact, right now, the chapter that we have in Newton are dealing with withdrawing one of their family members who was a meth user.
Yeah.
And they already were successful. He was actually on the show, last show for the 200th show, and he talked a little bit about that.
Yeah.
That he had already they had already successfully gone through the withdrawal with this family member, but she relapsed back.
Yeah.
And they were very disappointed in that, but they proved it.
But relapse is part of recovery sometimes.
It has to be. It's a journey that people are on for themselves, and nobody can dictate to another person what should or should not be that journey.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because
now that person is also now again gone through the withdrawal and is now into a treatment place. And that was really good news that we got yesterday on that one. And they were primarily a meth user. So, and I just remember, that statement being made. It's funny that you should ask it that way, because it said we proved that you can withdraw off meth with cannabis.
Yeah.
And I knew that anyway. I mean, like I say, we're here. We
edibles, not the smoking.
Edibles.
Yes.
Edibles.
Edibles is the thing.
Smoking can be part of the strategy
during your day to keep your levels up. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if once the edibles have worn off and you need more edibles, it's going to take a little while for those edibles to kick in, and people find that having some smoked cannabis during that time period tides them over quite well in many cases.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But yeah, it's edibles for sure. And so here we are. We've rolled this around pretty good. The edibles really work, and we really didn't roll around how they work for people with MS and other people. We should have Alison Murthan for people with epilepsy. We could have Haley Rose when she is going to come on the show coming up here in a little while. There's people with all kinds of different serious medical conditions that find cannabis is the one that works for them. The shoebox lid full of pharmaceuticals that they end up on if they don't have cannabis involved becomes very toxic, difficult to manage, and debilitating health-wise. You take this pill, but it causes this problem. Now you got to take this pill to solve that problem. Now this pill you take it for that causes this problem, so now you got to take another one. And the doctors, they're all smart about it. They all know which 16 or 25 bottles of pills you should have there, and which ones of each ones you should take it, when you got your handful into 3 times a day. Oh. Where cannabis is involved, like you were saying, the cannabis will go in, your body knows what it needs, and it targets those things with those added cannabinoids.
Yeah.
So,
I just gave my blood on Thursday, and the nurse, her husband is a police officer, and we were talking about what we do, and I educated her, and now she's going to go and educate him.
nice.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yes.
Just a straight up
And,
nurse, right?
and I really got the sense from this cop Dan, because we once again rolled around a lot of these things. I reiterated what I had said.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I can't. This is what's going on here. But he says, you realize that, we have a job to do. We have a mandate. We have orders. This is just a situation that we're in on our side of it.
Yeah.
And there was more on his side too. I mean, he talked about the costs of protests, that every one costs money. So we do our best to minimize that. We bring in our own security. We make sure we leave it cleaner than we find it.
Yeah.
We have first aid and the rest of it. But I mean, you're certainly right that, with any protest, there are some costs incurred. Just some insights that he gave. And he also, to be fair and honest, in 2014, when we had our super amazing Cannabis Day at the art gallery, that led to 2015, where they tried to stop it after that. Right?
Yeah.
2014 was incredible. So many people. And he said, that one, you closed down all the streets all the way around the art gallery, right in the center of the city.
Yeah.
On a day that was like Canada Day, so not cool to do that. And I said, well, it wasn't us that closed down the streets, it was you guys with your prohibition. If you hadn't had the prohibition, we wouldn't have had to do what we did to close down the streets to try to get attention.
Yeah.
But he also said that on that day, he personally dealt with, he thinks, 14 different people that OD'd on edibles.
Oh, yeah.
He said one guy, he literally carried him on his back to the hospital.
Yeah.
And I said, and the hospital didn't do anything for him. He goes, well, I know, but that's irrelevant, And he said, these people are still being harmed.
Yeah.
And it's still
That's
a cost to our,
We
our...
know that with alcohol too.
Oh,
Would
for
get
sure.
super drunk and fucking puke all over the place, or
100%.
shit themselves, or whatever. What?
100%.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens.
If you're not responsible with.
And it was a hot day.
Yeah.
It was July 1st. It was really hot that day. There was people that weren't properly hydrated. And I said to him, I said, you don't know what else was going on with these people.
Yeah.
I mean, sure that, this looks like the result of eating edibles, and they'll probably admit to you that that's what they did. But are they going to admit to you that they had been on speed for 3 days before they got to that rally? And,
or they just
like the guy that went up and took part in the biggest hit. How did that ever get to happen? That should never have happened. That we were giving away, handing out globs of dabs, not dabs, but globs to people that would come up on stage. Not me, because I would never have approved of that. I talked against it every time it came up, and I never let it happen again after that because of what happened there that day. But, you can't have people up there who you have no idea about all of a sudden deciding to take massive heroic doses of really good concentrates. Like, the idea was to prove that, that's not going to kill anybody, right?
Yeah.
But there was one person that did that. We only had the one person that was, but he had serious problems. He ended up in the green out tent for quite a while.
Yeah.
Turns out he'd been doing speed for 3 days before that. He hadn't eaten a damn thing, and there he was, and he wasn't used to doing edibles.
Yeah.
But no, you don't do that kind of a competition. Despite what you're trying to demonstrate there, that's irresponsible. That should never have happened. But. So there's some issues with edibles, there's some issues with concentrates, there's a role for government to play in making sure that they have the right information going along with them. But the role for government is not to deny their availability. Because when you do that, then you guarantee the availability is going to not be regulated. It's going to not have those labels on or warnings on them. It's going to not be of some standardized dosage necessarily. It might be. And people in the underground and unregulated market, they did do branding and labeling and tried to do the best they could along those lines, but you really don't know what you're getting.
No.
So they're really unleashing all of these people that are desperate because of their health concerns into a space where they've got to try to fend for themselves and figure out for themselves where to get what they need, not available in a storefront, not available in any regulated, properly dosed, properly cautioned packaging. It's way, way, way more dangerous for our society. Not that there's much danger in it. You know, nobody's getting serious health issues from eating too much cannabis. They're perhaps not then using cannabis edibles where it would have saved them so much pain and suffering in their lives if they'd have been able to have it and access it. But because they used too much the first time, never willing to try it again. And that's all on government. Yeah. Government could have gotten ahead of this a long, long time ago. We could have kids that are educated about medicine, about the endocannabinoid system, about edibles, about the possibilities of eating too much. Because it's okay to educate your kids about that. I hope that we're educating our kids about the possibilities of drinking too much. You know, I think we are.
I hope so.
I think that's responsible to do that.
I hear that the younger generation's not drinking as much. That they did some surveys. And that's good to hear. And not all of the people are smoking.
And it makes
too,
sense.
Right? Yeah.
People have got more access to cannabis because of legalization.
Yeah.
The average consumer is way better off with the legalization that we have right now than they were during Prohibition.
Yeah.
They're not going to get arrested. They're not going to have a cop come and put his hand on your shoulder when you're standing around the corner there with your friends and, you know, want to know whether or not what you got there is something that's going to help you or something that's going to hurt you. Because if you got the stuff that's going to help you, you're going to jail, son.
Smoking one in the park or something, you don't have to worry about it, right?
Even
though I still look behind me. You know?
Well, we've still got the flinch going on because the red lights come on. We see the cop. We're like, what the hell, you know?
Yeah. Hide that.
A lifetime of conditioning is what we've been exposed to here.
Yeah.
So, you know, thankfully the new generation doesn't have that. Yeah. And most of them don't really get it. It's up to us to convince them and to educate them about the fact that there's people still being arrested. There's people still losing their families, losing their homes, losing their liberty because of the over-regulation of cannabis, which still involves the criminal law.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to say it's not prohibition anymore, but yes, it is. And it's prohibition with the criminal law being the tool used to prevent people from doing what they're doing, which is outside of the cartel. We really, as activists, still have a major job to do to make sure that the public gets it, that this legalization is by the rich, for the rich, and it's hurting the most vulnerable and at-risk people in our society greatly, and still costing us a hell of a lot of money. When people go to the government store and plunk down $40 for an eighth, 3.5 grams of a plant that could have been grown and produced pretty much as easily as any other plant out there that you wouldn't pay more than $10 a pound for. This is going to be $40 for just 3 grams, less than 1/100th of a pound, and they're going to get $40 for that. What you're doing is you're paying the fine without actually having to go to jail or go to court to get the fine levied on you.
Money on you.
They're still making a ton of money on you. They're still excluding the people that just don't have the $40 to spend on that eighth, you know. And we learned that the government, so the weed store, the government licensed cannabis store, that there's cannabis options there that are like $5 a gram. Mm-hmm. So with that, you could, you're under $20 for that eighth of weed. Still quite a bit, mind you, based on what it could be produced and brought to market for if it was grown outdoors.
$50 right now if you buy quantity.
At the government store?
No,
and on the underground marketplace, right?
Yeah.
So,
well,
the price is but for average, not usual cannabis consumer, just gonna want to have some at a party, doesn't care about having the best.
$20.
You can go get an eighth for $20 at the government store there, and they think they're doing real good by that. But if you're a medical user, if you're somebody who's targeting certain conditions or whatever, you're not going to be satisfied with that $5 gram from the government store. You're going to be looking at the one that's $15 a gram. and now they're bringing in the craft cannabis, which has got to be upwards of $20 a gram.
Wow.
And you're going to be thinking to yourself, look, I got this serious thing going on here. I can't be buying the shit weed. They've got this other obviously really good weed. This is my health we're talking about. I guess I better pony up the money and pay it.
Mm-hmm.
No reason for $20 a gram ever.
No.
You can justify $3 or $4 a gram. $2, $3, $4. You can sort of justify that. And you don't have to justify it to the rich people. They don't give a shit.
No.
They don't care. They'll pay $25 a gram if that's the best stuff and it looks good. No problem. Don't have to justify why it's that much money. But realistically, you should have to justify to some degree the cost. And like I say, the rich people, they don't. You can go and buy shit that rich people buy where you're paying probably triple or quadruple or more than that what it's worth. 10 times what it actually took to put those plastic things together, to make that whatever it is, to sew these clothings, to do whatever it is. You're just paying for the name. You're paying for the right to pay more so that you can say that you paid more, so that you can feel like you paid more, and that you got more because you paid more. And that's a real, absolute, genuine, bona fide marketing strategy that's out there. Many of these high-end stores, they didn't pay that much for the stuff that they got there. They're charging through the nose for it because you're buying it off this reputable store because you want to pay more.
Yeah.
And that's the clientele they're looking at. But that's not most of us. Most of us have to worry about if we spend an extra $40,
Where's it going to come from?
where's it going to come from to pay these bills before the end of the month?
Yeah.
We got to make sure that we cut back on everything because at the end of the month we seldom have enough to really pay that. We're going farther in debt every time. This is reality for most Canadians. The economy sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything is so expensive. The economy sucks bad. And remember during COVID, where if you decided that you had some masks and you wanted to sell them, but you were going to sell them at $20 a piece because why not? Everybody needed them. Everybody wanted. You were a criminal for that.
You were.
Yeah. You were not allowed to do that, boy, I'll tell you. You buy some needles with vaccine in it and you try to up the price more than a certain reasonable amount, and they're coming after you, boy, oh boy, oh boy. But here we got cannabis, where they up the price, tax, fee. Gotta be packaged like this, gotta be moved like that, gotta be secured like this, gotta have these things in place. All this stuff is expensive, all this stuff adds to the price of the product. No real reason for it. Let the farmers bring it to market in whatever fashion they want.
Yeah.
Those farmers that want to grow indoor connoisseur cannabis spend the money on the lights and the dehumidifiers and the fans and so much more. They can do that. Their costs are going to be considerably higher than those people that just grew it outdoors or in a hybrid greenhouse, took advantage of the sun, cheap fertilizer, because cheap fertilizer can work just as good as good fertilizer, believe it or not. Depends how you use it. And bring it to market at a price that's way, way lower than what those people that are growing connoisseur weed indoors for. And that's fine. That's fine. Plenty of room in our society for high-end cannabis to be sold. Plenty of room amongst the marketplace for that stuff to sell. It's going to sell it. You can sell your cannabis for $10 a gram for the next 40 years probably. Mm-hmm. And maybe beyond. And maybe forever. Because real good connoisseur grown cannabis isn't as cheap to grow as the other stuff for sure. The grower who has the expertise deserves that extra money for his expertise and the time and all the struggles that went in to making him able to grow that stuff, all the lost crops along the way.
Yeah.
The intense electricity bills and hydro bills, which are huge to grow indoors.
Now with LED, it's a lot better.
Yeah, LEDs are making that a lot better for sure.
Yeah, we don't have to use those big bulbs.
The cost of good trimmers or good trim equipment, not cheap.
No.
The best equipment and the real good growers are using the best of everything. That's what they do. They go and buy the best lights, the best dehumidifier.
Using a living soil.
Living soil is another one. That's
Yes.
not cheap.
So where the worms are eating the bacteria and the bacteria are working all together and it's all live.
Yeah.
It's not bagged soil. There's actually life in the soil and stuff like that.
They pay top dollar for trimmers.
Yeah.
They have to worry about security because of the value of their crop. They have to have people they can trust. They have to have mechanisms in place to be able to make sure there's not a lot of temptation for people. They can justify charging $2, $3, $4, maybe even $5 a gram, and maybe $10 and maybe $20 a gram if they've got the name that people want.
Yeah.
And people will pay it, some people, and they'll make money, and they can have their market share, and that's all great. But to deny access to farmers who would otherwise produce cannabis in ways that would still be of good quality for people, and not allow them to bring it to market and get it to people at prices that they could really afford for them and their family and their loved ones, that wouldn't put a big dent in anything, and no taxes required on that. And then the officer, Dan, and I, we had a little chat about taxes. You know, he said, all these people making profit. I said, there's nothing wrong with profits, sir. He said, but they're not paying taxes. I said, but they're providing a service. I said, people selling alcohol put society at risk.
Yeah.
Alcohol has a percentage of people that can't use it properly or don't use it, that will cause societal costs. Somewhere that money's got to come from.
Yeah. So,
So
taxed.
you put tax on there.
Yeah.
Cannabis doesn't bring with it any of those societal costs.
Yeah.
No need for policing, no need for hospitalizations, no need for any of that kind of stuff. Brings with it a whole bunch of benefits. Offsets the use of the hard drugs, offsets the use of alcohol, offsets the use of tobacco. Like you said, the use of tobacco and alcohol have gone down in our society. Over the last 5 years, coming up in October, we've had pretty easy access to cannabis for the average consumer. And they're consuming less alcohol and less tobacco.
Yeah.
Which is good for them, good for us, and I guess bad for government, because government is in the alcohol and tobacco business.
Yeah.
They make
And
huge
the-
profits
and
off
the
of both of those
And the
commodities.
environment tax business.
Oh, they're in a few different businesses.
You know, they're going to tax us for them allowing fossil fuels to run in our vehicles and stuff like that. I guess, yeah.
When they put Al Capone out of business, they took over.
Yeah.
Huge profits involved.
Anyway, sir,
We're about that time.
13 minutes left.
We've rolled it around. I think that's good.
You think we're good? I'll come see you next week.
Come see me next week.
How about you come see you tomorrow?
We're coming up to our 4th anniversary on the program here. We'll just figure out exactly what date that was, and we'll let you know.
Yep.
So another reason for more cake.
More cake.
Well, whatever.
Hint,
No pressure.
Somebody. Yeah. All right. We'll see you next week.
All right. So I think we rolled that around fairly well to try to show just how flippin' crazy this is. To try to wake people up about the fact that this is completely wrong. This is wrong to an extreme magnitude when you're supposedly dealing with free people in a free country with public servants. That Health Canada is a department that is supposed to be taxed with looking after the health and well-being of our citizens, the masters of this society. And it has become through our journey extremely evident that that is not what they are concerned about. And I would imagine that's because that's what they're told not to be concerned about by the very highest levels of our government and by the corporate elite that pull the strings of our government. The magnitude of this hypocrisy is criminal and immense. The amount of cost to our society is incalculable. There are so many areas where this is costing us. costing us money and humans, and the quality of life that those humans have. Also that a very small select group of humans can profit greatly and live in ivory towers and fly around in their fancy jets and feel like they're the kings of the world. Criminal hypocrisy in a place where our forefathers have fought and died, and we as people have been struggling for millennia to free ourselves from the bully rich. This issue is probably the most glaring example of just how far it's wrong. It would even be the case if it wasn't for the public health crisis and emergency that is the overdose crisis. Even without that, the amount of cost to our society in running the Trudeau cartel, the amount of pain and suffering involved with the poor and the sick that are the ones mostly disaffected by this so-called legalization is, as I stated, incalculable. How do you even put a price tag or a value on someone's pain and suffering, be it physical or emotional? How do you place a value on all of those mothers and fathers that had their children taken away simply because of government lies and corruption with respect to cannabis? Priceless, probably. Way more value than you could ever imagine for those people in the middle of that. For those parents who had their kids taken away, for those families that had their breadwinner taken away, for all those people that ended up living lives of fear, consuming alcohol instead of cannabis, commercial tobacco instead of cannabis, not being able to deal with their sleep issues, with their health issues, with their mood issues. The price of all of that is incalculable. This is a horrendous crime. This is criminal hypocrisy 2.0. Because now, it's not like it was. Back before the Ledane Commission here in Canada, the jury was out. There'd been a lot of stories about cannabis causing problems. A lot of media reports of the ills of cannabis. A lot of reports coming from the medical industrial complex about the ills of cannabis. But the Ledane Commission sorted most of that out. And ever since then, it is such a closed case, done deal. We already get it. We know cannabis is not causing us problems in society. A lot of other things are causing us problems in society. Cannabis isn't one of them. Cannabis is solving a lot of problems in society. For those people who are most in trouble, the ones that we should really be most concerned about, maybe only ones we should be concerned about, the ones our government should be concerned about, they benefit greatly from cannabis. And when they're denied access, they suffer because of it. So much cost to our society by the corruption of our government over the last 100+ years here. So much loss of value to people, and yet it's plain as can be. It's black and white. Stop sending the studies to Health Canada, my lawyer says. They already know. That's not part of what they're making their decision about. Doesn't matter that the evidence is extremely clear. The science is in. Cannabis helps people. It changes lives for the positive. It saves lives in many instances. They know. And they don't care. So this is one of the biggest stories going on in our society. I think hopefully it's going to get some coverage in the press. course, you won't be able to know about it because Facebook can't reproduce news stories anymore. So I don't know where you're going to get your news about what's really going on,
Right here. Cannabis culture.
other than right here with Cannabis Culture. But you're going to have to look for it. And I hope you keep up with it, because these are very interesting times. And as we go to court, coming right up against Health Canada, we'll see what happens. Are they going to prove what I've been saying for the last 4 years? That they're corrupt and we're in trouble? Or are the courts going to show that they're not as corrupt and they're going to address this properly? I'm hopeful, but not terribly optimistic. We'll see what happens. Anyway, we're going to go for a quick little visit outside. You know what it's all about, Cannabis Substitution Program. We're broadcasting from the location where we've been set up with our RV for over 3 years. Continuing with the program, it was started 6.5 years ago to address the overdose crisis. Demonstrating for all of that time how effective it is, how safe it is, and trying to get the government to support us, or at least allow us to exist in a way that would permit us to help people the way that we really can. So let's go outside. I want to know. I want to know about what it's doing in Vancouver.
It's going to rain.
It feels like there might be a little dribble or something, but I don't even know about
30 millimeters tonight.
Is that what they say?
Yep, we're going to get some rain finally.
The weather people are getting more accurate, I think. I'm not sure. A test is coming up. They're calling for a heat wave. 1 week from today, it's supposed to be 30 degrees here. Uh-oh, we got...
There's some news.
Hopefully they're not going to arrest somebody for providing cannabis as an option to people, you know? Who knows for sure?
Another one.
But,
No.
yeah.
Wow.
Whatever it is, it's very close by.
Pretty close, yeah.
And that's mostly what the weather is around here with respect to law enforcement. It's stormy. We get all sorts of fire engine storms and police car and ambulance storms coming through all the time. Trying to solve a crisis caused by government in the first place and being perpetuated by government, who is trying to monopolize and monetize this public health emergency. And that's what they've been doing for the last 6+ years now. We're into the 7th year, or are we into the 8th year? I guess we're into the 8th year now of this public health emergency. They have spent millions. They're happy to tell you all about it. They've spent millions of dollars to try to solve this public health emergency. And by spend, I mean giving it to friends of theirs. That's our money that they're giving out quite happily to be able to say that they're doing something, and really they're just continuing it, maintaining it, providing free needles, providing all of this stuff that keeps people doing what's going on here, and very little to ever get them off those drugs and get them out of here and into productive lives, which could really happen, especially if they would embrace the cannabis option, which we continue to demonstrate every day for 6.5+ years. We prove every day that nobody gets harmed by what we're doing, and a whole bunch of people are extremely grateful and reporting to us that this is helping them in their lives, getting them off of those hard drugs. And the hundreds of people that are members and have been for years and years here got off of those hard drugs. Thank us for that. And without it, might not even be walking today.
Yeah.
Because they could be just the statistics of people that have died of overdoses.
Oh, right, here we go.
Or maybe statistics of people who had overdoses and now can't even function.
Uh-oh, what's going on? Oh, it's,
We have no knowledge of what's going on down there.
no.
There's a couple of those guys, I think, that hang around there. They would beat somebody up this morning, I think.
Oh, wow.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's one up by the store.
But
Yeah,
they're having a look anyway. Well, that's fine. We'll let them do their work,
Yeah.
and we can only hope that what they're doing is in the public's interest,
Yeah.
as opposed to what happened when they came and raided us and tried to shut us down. Not in the public's interest at all. Not about public health and safety at all. About protecting the financial health of the government monopoly and the government cartel. That's what they were doing here. and really upset at them for Cannabis Day for doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Really upset with a mayor who doesn't get it, doesn't seem to understand what he's taken over here in Vancouver. We have a tradition and a history of supporting the activists and those people who are trying to make the world a better place here. And the mayor of Vancouver at this point, Ken Sim, has undermined all of that, has set us back decades in our attempt to turn this thing right, to overturn this criminal hypocrisy that's been going on for all this time. So here we are in our humble home, waiting patiently, doing what it is while waiting not so patiently, and doing whatever it is we think we have to do to force this issue and to get cannabis as an option for people in a neighborhood filled with options that are causing pain, misery, and death. So we put out our signs every day. This vehicle never leaves here. It's been here for 3 years, although this is the third one we've had. But we've occupied this space for 3 years plus, and not trying to hide anything, not trying to get away with anything, not trying to get rich off of anybody, just trying to help the neighborhood and help the world by allowing governments to permit low barrier access to cannabis and let it do what it can do for your society. Hey, boss.
That's robotic light.
Probably mostly robotic.
Well, I mean, let's start somewhere.
On a completely different topic,
terrible drawing, yeah.
I see that there's table tennis is being taken over by AI robots at this point.
Oh no.
And I was watching this one, and I'll
Kinda
tell
weird,
you that the stance was incredible, right? The stance of this robot, you could just see the posture, the body language of how it was responding to where the ball.
Look this up now.
Just exactly what a professional ping pong player would look like in their stance when they're doing that.
Interesting.
But quite quick. So anyway, that's another topic. But we cover all kinds of topics here.
Pong would be jealous.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with
I
AI.
could
I'm
touch
always
back.
bringing
I
it
could
up,
touch
man.
back on what you were talking about out there. I
I'm
heard
showing
you talking a
the
little bit
the
about
tennis
it.
One
player
at
in
a
the
time.
future.
One at a time.
Don't show them. It's terrible.
It's okay.
They're gonna steal
And
my
don't
ideas.
show him either. He's
I'm on
running
the
a
camera.
camera here.
You're talking to me.
Anyways.
Anyway, so
No,
you
no, yeah. So, anyways, what you were talking about out there about the legal, about the system not
steal my ideas,
recognizing
people.
how much of a need we are in this community, but recently, within the last 6 months, I've started to see support workers coming from the different shelters, from sites like on site over there, where they've actually told their patients and their clients and their clientele to come here specifically for the reason that they can access cannabis at a reasonable price, and use it as part of their as part of their treatment and recovery process. A lot of these people can't go from 100 to 0. A lot of these people need the option to be able to go to step into something soft.
Yeah, no, we get all of that. The police would even come and buy off us if they could.
If they could.
But we do get, many of the other people, all harm reduction groups, they're all coming here. The construction workers from across the street. We're a service that is here and people use it. One of the points that I was making on BC Bud Day and on Cannabis Day was that, if this legalization is so good, if Trudeau's done what, Canadians want to have happen, then why do we exist? Why are we still having protests? Why do we still have thousands of people come to 420 to purchase stuff there? If their system is providing what Canadians want and need, then nobody would be going to an RV on the side of the road. Nobody would be going to anybody's basement suite. You wouldn't be buying somebody, out from underneath a trench coat around the corner. But that's still all going on because the government legalization is not satisfying the needs of the neighborhood or the community or the consumers.
Oh, I mean, you say that, you say that, and we have old age pensioners that come to the RV, because they're 70 years old. They need the help, but they can't afford the government prices, and you provide access for them as well.
Yeah, we hear it all day long. The reasons why we need to exist and the government stores are not satisfying the needs of people. We hear it all day long. And we will continue to do this. 201 shows under the belt at this point. All of it's been about the same basic theme, and we'll continue until the proper change happens. We're going to keep telling you the truth. We're going to still have some hope that maybe we can get the change that we're looking for, and we're not going to stop until we do. You know, it's a process. It takes time. The forces that we're up against are very well entrenched and very well leveraged, and they don't want to let this go. We talked about all the different groups that are still making large amounts of money, and the ones at the top of the cannabis pile who are making lots of money on the way this is. They don't want low barrier access. They don't want people to have easy option of cannabis out there, and we need to make sure that happens. So this process involves you. It involves us. It involves every one of us and all of us. We're all a crew on this particular journey, and the more we get, the closer we're going to get into our destination. We need critical mass. We need that one person that puts that straw on the camel's back that finally makes it break. We need to have everybody do what they can do. Do what you can do. A whole bunch of different things, you know. Put on a little bake sale and talk about cannabis there. See, I'm changing things a little bit. Write emails, write letters, make phone calls, go to the offices of your politicians, go to the media, go to the police, go to everybody you can think of, anybody in any way. Let's all bring what we have to the table to overturn this, because this is the linchpin. This is the one that has to go first. If these other areas of our society are going to be brought into proper, reasonable line, they can't. It's not going to happen unless we have proper legalization of cannabis. As long as poor people and sick people can't get access to a natural herb that would help them greatly without being a criminal or even at all, then we are not free, and we're not going to get any of those other freedoms that we think we should have here. Because if they can get away with making the cannabis plant a criminal offense to produce or to have, they can get away with all the rest of it that they want. We need to make sure that it stops here and grows from here in a movement of getting reasonable public servants, limited, accountable, transparent public servants, so that the generations to come will not be oppressed by the surveillance that's well on its way if we're all supposed to be forced to obey the government. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it a whole bunch. I love all you people. Thanks to all the people that helped make this possible, the Cannabis Substitution Program and the THC Show, to Cannabis Culture, to Glenn Wells, my producer and guest, always, and to you for watching. And enjoy your life. Go through it as best you can. Be kind to everybody. You don't need to stress about a whole bunch of stuff. It usually doesn't fix much. Just have as much fun as you can, and we'll see you next week.